All right, everybody, here we go. You ready? Let's go to Egypt.
So exciting.
Yeah. Oops, I want to go to the beginning and not to the end. There we go. All right, can everyone see it? It should have 3 photos and it should say Egypt, Cairo, and Holy Family.
Yeah.
All right, good deal. Well, in those of you who have seen part or all of the first 2 sessions, this is all from, as a reminder, it's all from a trip from January 2020. And my trip was a 10-day trip with 8 days in country and 2 days flying across water. And I didn't plan on going into any details about the tour trip or anything like that. And if you're interested, you can always send me a message and I'll be glad to share some of that with you. This is the 3rd and final of the Egypt travelogues. We have a Cambodia travelogue coming up next month, right, Ken?
Yes.
So tune in for that one. The first one of the Egypt travelogues took us to the pyramids in the Valley of the Kings. The second one was about the World Heritage Site temples at Luxor, so Karnak and Luxor and Abu Simbel. And tonight, this third one will take us back to Cairo to explore this amazing city and see how 3 major world religions live together there. And if we have time, I thought it would be fun to visit the really incredible spice market in Aswan. So,
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that's why I've got this little star down here on the map. That's where Aswan is. Up here is Cairo, near the Delta, not right on the Mediterranean, but near where the Nile Delta begins. And so we will hear a lot about the impact of the visit of the Holy Family and the 3 religions, great religions living together in Cairo. And then I think we'll have time to visit the spice market. So as before, let's orient ourselves in time and see where we've been. In the first session, first of the travelogues, we were over here in the 2000 to 2500, the 1500 BCE era with the pyramids in the Valley of the Kings. The last session, we talked about the major temples. Karnak was the oldest of those temples, started around 2000 BCE, and some of them went all the way up almost to the turn of the Common Era. Tonight, most of the time is going to be around the turn of the Common Era with the Roman times and even into the 9th and 10th centuries of the Common Era. So a very different time period here that we're going to be working on. So the first thing is to take a look at those Roman ruins, because that's really the foundation of the city of Cairo. It was a Roman fortress at the turn of the Common Era. The Romans never actually made a major city out of it. It really was a defensive position and a fortress the whole time the Romans had it. And you can see on the left some of the actual ruins. On the right, this is a tourist destination complete with signposts that explain to you what you're looking at. Unfortunately, you can't walk through the ruins. You have to just stand at the railing and look over at them and admire them. But this is predates the founding of the modern century, or the modern city of Cairo, by about pretty close to 900 years. These ruins do.
Wow.
Yeah. In modern Cairo, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are all part of the fabric of the city. Today, Islam is growing and the number of Christians and Jews is declining. Today, only 1% of Egypt's population is Jewish. 5% is Christian, predominantly Coptic Christian, and 94% Muslim. So these 3 sites represent the different, in these pictures, represent the different religions. And we'll visit each one of the sites represented in these pictures. The first one on the left is Ben Ezra Synagogue. The one in the middle is the Cavern Church, also known as Abu Sergeh. And the one on the right is Ibn Tulun Mosque. So let's look at the Ben Ezra Synagogue first. Tradition holds that this is the site where Moses was drawn from the Nile. I mean, just saying those words kind of blows my mind a little bit, you know, to think that we could stand there and realize that that's where, you know, like with all of these sites, the stories may not be provable in archaeological fact, but there's nobody that disputes with a different story. This is the traditional story of where Moses was drawn. Now, you don't see any water in this picture for good reason, and that is that the course of the Nile has changed over the centuries. So the Nile River does run through Cairo, but it no longer runs right past this spot. And they planted a tree there to commemorate this. And unfortunately, I can't share any pictures. They didn't allow photography inside the building. So I don't have any interior pictures. It was a kind of a solemn space. It wasn't really an ornate and elaborate space at all, but really it had you felt a presence when you were in there. Next, let's go to the Ibn Tulun Mosque. This mosque is the oldest and largest mosque in Cairo and was built in the 9th century. So this mosque has been around the entire time that Cairo has been a city. It's just incredible. It's not necessarily the most, you know, membership or the busiest, but it is the largest footprint in terms of physical space. And one of the unique features of this mosque is this really gorgeous spiral minaret. You can see the spiraling going up, and those are all the stairs. That's how they get to the minaret to make the call for prayer. They still use it to do the call for prayer around the city.
Barb, is that on top of the building back there, or is that behind?
It's behind.
It's behind, okay.
It's behind, yeah. And the space is a little deceptive because this building is like a baptismal font. I mean, it's an immersion font in this little building here in the center of the space. And that really is in the center of the space. You know, it's hard to really get a sense, for me anyway, of spatially where it is, but it's in the center of this enormous open air area. And the mosque has both this open air portion and also underneath the arches, there are rooms back there that are covered. So they can either pray out in the open with their prayer rugs, or they can go in, you know, the individual rooms and pray. So most of the Christian churches in Egypt are Coptic Christian. Is that a new word? Do people know what Coptic is? Have you heard that before? Does anybody? Okay. Coptic was actually the last native language spoken by the Egyptians before the Muslim world established itself in the region. Once the Muslims arrived, Arabic began to push out Coptic as the language. And now Coptic is really not spoken. It's Arabic that's really spoken by Christians, you know, as well as Muslims, you know, in the area. They speak Arabic, and a lot of them speak English because Egypt was a British colony protectorate until the 1950s, I think. Yeah. So the word Coptic, the sounds are like an Arabic word that the Muslims use to describe the local people. The word Egypt sounds more like the Greek word that was used to describe them. So if you think about Greek, a person can be Greek, or the language that they speak can be Greek. It's the same with the word Coptic. A person could be Coptic in the day. We hardly ever use it that way. It's hardly ever, rarely see anyone use it in that context now. It's almost always used to describe the religion. But there were people that were described as Coptic in the same way Greeks, people were described as Greek in the ancient world. If you ask an Egyptian, and especially a Coptic Christian, whether they are Arab, they will correct you right away and say, no, I'm not an Arab, I'm an Egyptian. So they make a very strong distinction between Arabs and Egyptians. And the main differentiator is that the Egyptians really trace their long-term lineage back to the Pharaonic peoples. So these churches, there's several of them. There's a couple of them here that we'll visit. And this one is called the Hanging Church. It is a Coptic Christian church. And you can see the carving that's in on another wall along the entryway here. Just beautiful, beautiful carving. Very much focused on the Holy Family. And this is called the Hanging Church because it's literally built on top of the fortress of Babylon that we just saw the pictures of. The ruins come all the way over here. This is kind of along the backside of where you can view the ruins, and they built this church here. So you go into the church, and there's a part of it where the floor is plexiglass, and you can literally look down through the floor of the church and see the ruins below you. So it's the Hanging Church. The entry courtyard that you just saw, these mosaic pictures, these were absolutely stunning. The colors were vibrant, and you can almost get a sense for it. The picture doesn't quite do it justice, but close. But this is, the themes, the context is very focused on the Holy Family. This is Joseph and Mary and baby Jesus riding the donkey into Egypt. This is the Holy Family with the baby Jesus here, and this represents the cavern where they stayed, where they hid. And but so the art very much thematically celebrates it, even though this particular church isn't directly connected with the Holy Family. It's still a prevailing theme throughout, particularly Cairo, the presence of the Holy Family there. And we will see the Cavern Church, which is where tradition holds that the Holy Family stayed. So inside the Hanging Church is actually quite a bit larger than I was expecting it to be. You see these glass display cases in the photo on the left, both hanging along the wall and then just standing along the wall. And they are full of relics of saints, just all kinds of relics. It's really, it's like visiting, the Smithsonian, America's Attic. This is all about all of the saints and everything here. And we were in this church. There was actually a service going on. Our tour leader, I don't know if this is his church, but in any event, he has a connection with the priest, and they bring tour groups here all the time. And while we were in there was actually a service going on, and they were doing communion at the point where we arrived. So in their tradition, all of the men are served communion first, and the women have to wait. And then when the men are finished, then the women are allowed to have communion. So what I want to do is I want to share a brief video with you and let you see and hear the chanting and the communion take place in this church. So give me just 1 second here and I'll find this. Okay, so listen carefully. This is pretty quiet. So if you have your speakers turned down, you might want to turn them up a little bit now for this. So we're about to have communion, and you'll hear the chanting in the background. Right. Kind of fascinating. So, questions about that? Can everybody hear that?
Yes.
Barb,
Right.
when they served the men communion like that, did the women come up too the same way?
No, the men were already done. They had gone back to their seats, or they had gone to touch the display cases. They would walk up and down those aisles. And, you know, does everybody know the television show Monk? In the opening credits, Monk walks around and he touches every single parking meter, everything as he walks by, he touches. That's what they were doing with the these glass cases. They'd walk up and down the rows and they'd touch every single one of the cases
Oh,
to,
wow.
you know, venerate the saints there.
Okay.
Yeah. Darcel, there's a wide range of, I have some pictures of just kind of Egyptians out and about. It very much depends on where in the country you are and how old the women are, as to how much, you know, their head coverings. Oops, yeah. Sorry, I'm getting set up for the next one here.
And Eric asked if they do both the host and wine for communion.
Let's see, what do they do for communion? They do host. I'm not sure exactly. I imagine they do wine. I'm not sure exactly what they do, but they definitely do a host. It's almost like being in a more conservative Orthodox or Catholic church.
It actually is. The Coptic Christian Church is, you know, Christianity worldwide is divided into three branches: Roman Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox. And Coptic is considered part of the Orthodox branch. And in most Orthodox churches, they only serve the host, not the cup. And if they do serve the cup, the priest always, you know, nobody touches it except the priest.
Yeah. Thanks, Ken. And the head coverings, the older women tend to always cover their heads, especially outside of the major population centers. The more rural you get, the more conservative people generally are. Think about this country. It's kind of, you know, if you're in the more rural parts of the state, of the country, tend to get more conservative views. It's the same in Egypt. If you're in more rural areas, tend to get more conservative views, and the women tend to cover their heads more. Younger women in Cairo or Alexandria, the major population centers, dress in Western dress, and they may only use I forget the name of what they just wrap their head in. Or they may, you know, some of them, the really progressive ones, may not at all. But most of the younger women, even if they wear Western dress, will still cover their heads because they will tell you their father wants them to do that. So, all right, let's go. Back now to the hanging church. There. Okay. I have a better picture of this pulpit that you see here on the right. This thing was incredible. It's made of marble, and it's like hundreds of years old. And the stairs, the priest actually is supposed to deliver the the sermon from the balcony up here, the top level. But I'm not sure if this is, it's still used that way or if it's just there for display right now. But you can see, I hope you can see the 12 pillars that hold the top part up represent the 12 apostles. And some of them are different from the others. You can see the one that's pretty much right in front of you at the right front. I hope you can see that it's striped. Can you see that?
Yes.
That represents St. Peter, the head of the church. And the two pillars at the very back, one is black, one is gray. If you can see those, the black one represents Judas and the gray one represents Doubting Thomas. Okay, so that the hanging church is actually close, just outside of the area that's called Old Cairo. So to go into Old Cairo, to go to either the Ben Ezra Synagogue or the Cavern Church, you have to go through this like archway. It's not an abnormally small one. Well, a basketball player might think it was abnormally small, but I didn't have to go through there. It wasn't that small. But we were gathering there and our tour leader was sharing with us what we were about to see and telling us a little bit about the area. And before we went through that arch, he said, "Now, I want you to realize that you're about to walk the same road that Joseph and Mary walked." And I just got chills when he said that. So that was kind of amazing. Cavern Church is also called Abu Serga. And this church is called the Cavern because it is built over top of the cave, the cavern where the Holy Family stayed for about 3 months and hid when they were in Egypt. They were fleeing Herod. If you recall the Bible story, Herod was going to slaughter all of the young boys. And so the Holy Family took the Christ child and left and went into Egypt. And so this was one of the places where they stayed and hid. This church also celebrates Saints Sergius and Bacchus. And there's a picture of the two saints together. These were Roman citizens, and the story says that they were high-ranking officers in the Roman army. But they had converted to Christianity secretly, and nobody in the Roman army knew until they were ordered with their troop to go to one of the pagan temples and make a sacrifice with this Roman civic leader that they were supposed to accompany him and go with him and do this. And they were looking for a way to get out of it, and they got found out as Christians. And so they got arrested. They were publicly humiliated. They were chained up, dressed in female attire, and paraded around town. So the Romans couldn't convince them, and they couldn't bully them to give up their faith. They held steadfast, and Bacchus was beaten to death by the Romans. And the story goes that the next day, Bacchus's spirit appeared to Sergius and encouraged him to remain strong so that they could be together forever. And over the next few days, Sergius was tortured and finally executed. And Sergius and Bacchus became Christian martyrs and have been held up as an example of two early gay Christians because of their recognized love for each other. So Ken, how'd I do with that story? Close?
That's good, Barb. You did good. Yeah, and there's the other piece of that story is that right before Sergius was killed, an angel appeared to him and said if he did remain faithful, that his reward would be with Bacchus forever in heaven. And Dr. John Boswell says that was the loftiest expression of romantic Christian love for the first 1,000 years of Christianity.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Yeah. So that was really special to learn that Not only was this the Cavern Church, but it was a church that venerated Sergius and Bacchus. So let's take a look now. I'm going to go back here to get to the cavern part. You actually walk down, you can't walk down the central aisle. You have to go to the side aisles. But you go to the side and you come back to the back and go through these doorways and go on the other side of that wall. And that's where the cavern part begins. And what you do is you actually go down these kind of steep and uneven stairs to get down into the cavern. And once you get down there, the second picture shows you what the cavern looks like today. It was, rough hewn. It wasn't an actual or natural. It certainly didn't, have bricks and wasn't reinforced at the time that the Holy Family was there. But today they've shorn it up to make sure that it's safe and that, they can bring, pilgrims through there and folks to see it. The third picture is basically a hole in the carpet with a cap over it that says that this is the well from which the Holy Family drank. Picture there is just a plaque as you begin to go down the stairs that talks about the scripture that says, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." That's in Matthew, that phrase. But the Matthew piece was done in order to fulfill Hosea's prophecy that out of Egypt, that the Savior would come out of Egypt. So they have a plaque commemorating that and venerating that as well. So questions about the Cavern Church? Okay. The Holy Family references and information about it and their time in Egypt is literally all over Old Cairo. This photograph on the right, you can kind of see along the very bottom, the stones there. This was just a giant billboard that was just stuck in the middle of the street. It was just there. Everybody would walk up and go, "Oh, this is the route they took." Our tour leader said, yeah, some of that's probably based on fact and some of it is based on supposition, knowing that, there were parts that were believed to be more documentable, if that's a word. But this is, there's just, it's everywhere. I mean, this is a major feature of Old Cairo, is the presence of the Holy Family. Right. Well, I thought it would be fun to just get a sense for, we've seen a little bit of Old Cairo. Let's just talk about, just driving around the city. What do you see? So these are all just, en route to various touristy things and just taking pictures, a lot of them right out of the bus window. So you drive down the streets and Cairo is a city of more than 20 million people. And just for some reference, New York is about 10 million, unless you're talking about the extended, the metropolitan statistical area, that's more like 20 to 25 million. But the city of Cairo is now more than 20 million people, and all of them are on the roadway at rush hour. I mean, it's just an incredible traffic nightmare. But during the day, once everybody gets to wherever they're going, it's possible to get around the city a little bit. And you drive around and, you see like all kinds of mosques. These are like official buildings. The third picture is Tahrir Square. If you're familiar with that, you think back to 2012 and the Arab Spring, all the images of people protesting in the square and, rioting and everything to overthrow the government. Tahrir Square is where all that happened in Egypt. Tahrir Square, as I'm standing there taking a picture of Tahrir Square, what is immediately at my back is the Egyptian Museum, where all of the antiquities are. All of the artifacts and everything. I mean, it literally is right across the street from the Egyptian Museum. And this picture on the right, I thought was kind of fun. You see the giant pile of sand. If we were in the north, you would think that somebody was getting about ready to put that sand down because it's going to snow. But in Egypt, the sand is just everywhere. There's no way to stop it. It blows every which way you look. And even in the cities, the sand blows in and accumulates because once you get outside of the city, it's desert. You get away from the Nile at all. It's just very desert. Here's more of Cairo. The Nile flows through Cairo, so it's a city of bridges. It's also, a city of touristy things. Everywhere you look, there's shops, stores. You can buy all kinds of things. You can buy these little statues. This is a winged goddess Isis. There's Anubis. There are different pharaohs. I mean, there's Nefertiti. You can recognize maybe the bust, the distinctive shape of the crown. But just choose your favorite god or goddess, and you're likely to be able to find a statue of it in any, everywhere you look, there are these shops. The third picture, not everything is, well-kept government buildings and, official touristy things. In order to get between these spots, you have to drive through neighborhoods. And so there are these multi-story residences all over the city. And in this one, you can see the laundry, but it's unusual because you only see one set of laundry hanging out the windows. Most of these buildings, there's, every window, there's laundry hanging out. And the interesting thing about the way the Egyptians build these buildings is they rarely finish the entire building. Most of them will leave at least part of a top floor that's undone. Either there'll be windows out, or maybe a wall, interior wall missing, or it's just not finished for some reason. And they choose. The reason for this is that it's a tax dodge. But there's a higher tax rate that kicks in on the buildings if it's completely finished. So the builders have developed this little loophole, this scam, where they build 99% of the building and leave it undone. And that way they never have to pay the higher tax. It's just crazy. The picture on the right was taken from my hotel room. We stayed at a very nice Marriott hotel. So it was, very upscale, gorgeous setting, gorgeous restaurant. The hotel had been an 18th century palace and had been converted, restored, renovated, and converted. And this picture on the left is one of my favorites from Egypt. That was also taken from the hotel room at the Marriott. There's just something magical about Egyptian sunsets. Jane Ann, agree? She's still on?
Muted.
Oh, she's muted. Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. I was muted. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm on the floor because my dog is barking. So
Oh, okay.
I have a beautiful picture when you said the square was in front of you. I took a picture of the door knocker of the museum because it's such a spectacular lion with
Oh,
the
yeah.
brass ring. Oh my gosh, it was so beautiful. But
Yeah.
I have some really great pictures of the sunset by the Nile too. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There really is just something magic about it.
And you took a picture of sand and I took a picture of garbage. Like they have no garbage removal. And
Yeah.
so I took a picture of a camel sitting in the middle of this pile of plastic bottles and garbage.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
tour guide thought I was cuckoo to do that, but yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to be,
since.
yeah, I wanted to be able to give a sense not only of the, the upscale, well-maintained touristy parts,
Yes.
but a sense for the city of Cairo itself, which is like any big city. It has beautiful spaces and it has
Yes.
not so beautiful spaces. So we were sitting in the second picture here on this page. We were sitting stuck in traffic on the bus going to or from one of the sites. And this guy on this bicycle rides by. I talked about how bad the traffic is. This is one of the workarounds. They deliver bread on bicycles. Yeah, this is an enormous platter, double-decker platter of bread. So he's got, these loaves of bread and he balances on his head and he holds it with his hand and he rides his bicycle one-handed through the streets of Cairo.
Unreal.
Absolutely unbelievable. So the third picture, our tour guide told us that, what it was is falafel in a pita. And our tour leader said, so we're having Egyptian hamburgers for lunch. Hands always. And the picture on the right is one of the, the small monuments, small obelisks outside the Egyptian Museum. So if you saw my Facebook page at all while I was there, this was the picture I titled Two Ancient Monuments. So questions about any of this? How are we doing on time? Ready to go to Aswan? We have a few minutes. All right, let's go to Aswan. So this
Look
is
at
now,
that.
and what we did to get here is we flew to Luxor, which is right, it's kind of above, it's where there's a significant bend in the river there. That's where Karnak and Luxor Temple and Hatshepsut's temple, where all of those are. And when we were in Luxor, we got on one of the river boats and we went up the river to Aswan is where the boat stopped, but we stopped several of the temples along the way and stayed a couple of nights in Aswan. So we were out and, walked around the spice market. This was a kind of an add-on. This wasn't part of the official tour, but our tour leader said, my wife sent me with a shopping list. So I have to go to the spice market and, I'll take you guys along with me if anybody wants to go. So there's a group of us that went. And the spice market is an open air shopping district that offers every spice known to humankind and a few that are unknown that they just make up on the spot. The idea is that there's a spice master there and you go in and you tell them, they have jars, they have plastic bags, all different kinds of herbs and spices and really from all over the world or all over the Middle East and Africa, especially. And you go in there and you say something like, well, I'm having trouble with headaches. And he says, well, I have just the thing for you. And he goes out and he pulls all of these spices together and he grinds them up and he makes this little plastic bag for you to take home and brew a tea with it or something. And, if it's joint pain or something, you might make a poultice out of it and apply it, topically to the area that's bothering you. But they literally custom mix whatever you're having trouble with for the spices right there in front of you. And, this is just a giant open air spice market. You can see the pictures there. Of course, spices are one of the things that's available, but you can get t-shirts, pyramid paperweights, replicas of the Sphinx, jewelry, some genuine, some maybe kind of tourist ticky-tacky, trinkets of fans, trinkets of all varieties, shapes and sizes, African tribal masks. And, of course, the picture on the right, there's an entire shop dedicated to hookahs. The Egyptian men, it's the favorite thing, middle-aged Egyptian men sit around, talk, tell stories, and smoke their hookahs. It's what they do. And so there's an entire shop with hookahs. So.
Bart, did the spice shop smell amazing?
Oh, it did. Oh my goodness, it was amazing. I have another little video here. You can see and you can hear the sound in the spice market, but they haven't figured out a way yet for you to be able to smell it. So, but yes, it did. It smelled, absolutely incredible in there.
Correct me, but is that candy floss hanging from?
Yep, candy floss, absolutely. Yep. You
What?
name it, they had it. Anything you could ever imagine or think you could imagine was there in the spice market. All right, so let's see this next video. Sound up, listen carefully, and watch the people. Notice what they're wearing, the men and the women, because this is just, Egyptians out shopping, doing their normal thing. So, pay attention to what they're wearing and listen, because it was really a happy coincidence. I pulled out my phone and started to make that video. And as I was, hitting record, the call to prayer began to ring out. So you hear the call to prayer as we're walking through the spice market here. All right. And this woman with the blue shirt and tan trousers is with our tour group. So don't worry about what she's wearing or what she's doing. She's with us. She's looking around and checking it out. All right.
Huh.
Did you all hear that okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So you saw people dressed in very Western attire. You saw people dressed in very traditional Egyptian garments. There were even a few women wearing pretty close to burqas, the completely covered. So it really is a diversity there. All right, let's see if I can go back to the, that's not where I wanted to be. I want to be in Aswan. Why is it not moving? There, okay. All right, is everybody looking at the photographs of hookahs and the spice market?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That was just an amazing little bonus, an opportunity that cropped up, and it's a cool thing in travel when somebody says this is not on the program, but would you like to? I almost always try and say yes. Those tend to be the kind of amazing things that you run into. So I'll show you a little bit more about just Egyptians. A couple more pictures. This was our tour leader, taken at, I think this is at Kamombo Temple. And you can see the Christian symbols. This is one of the temples that the Christians got a hold of and tried to chisel all of the Egyptian gods off the walls and replace them with Christian symbols. But he's Coptic Christian, and he wore Western attire, trousers and shirts and jackets and things the entire time. The second picture was quite fun. This was taken at, I think, Philae Temple, but it happened a couple of places a couple of times. The woman with the blue sweater and kind of long blonde white hair is my cousin that I was traveling with. And I think her hair is what attracted people to her, because I can't tell you, probably 4 times when we were out walking around exploring the monuments together, women with children particularly would come up and ask if they could take pictures. So we had the best time with this group. They kept swapping out and taking pictures with each other's phones, and they'd change places, and they put the kids in different spots. We probably had spent about 15 minutes taking pictures and just laughing and having a great time with these women with their children. The third picture is an Egyptian man in more traditional garb. And the fourth picture was taken, these two men are the crew. We spent an afternoon on one of the feluccas that sail the Nile, one of the traditional Egyptian boats on the Nile. And these two men were part of the crew. So notice the variation in skin tone among the Egyptians. Some are much more lighter complected, some are much darker complected. And that's really always been the case in Egypt. There's a variety of skin tones present in the people, but particularly in Aswan and areas in the south of Egypt, you see more very dark skinned people. And it's quite likely that those Egyptians have Nubian descent or are descended from Nubians. And a lot of them, you know, especially older ones before the Aswan Dam, may have even lived in Nubia. Nubia was Egypt's southern border. And when the Aswan High Dam was built they started building it in the 50s and finished it in the 60s. Once that dam was brought online, it trapped the water behind it and created Lake Nasser, but it basically erased most of the country of Nubia, and people had to be, you know, hundreds of thousands of people had to be moved. And a lot of them moved north into Egypt. Some of them moved south into sub-Saharan Africa, but many of them moved north into Egypt. All right, we are just before 8 o'clock. We can either, if you have questions, we can talk about it, or I can give you 8 minutes of your Tuesday night back, or we can take a look at Philae Temple, which we didn't get to last time. What's your pleasure?
You guys
The
are on
temple.
mute.
For the temple too, Darcel.
The
8
temple.
minutes of temple.
Okay, all right, let's do it. So we boarded the boat at Luxor and sailed up the Nile to Aswan. Philae Temple is on an island just south of Aswan in the middle of the Nile. And this is a picture from you have to take a boat to get to Philae. Jane Ann, did you get there?
No, I only went as far south as Luxor.
Okay. You
But I
would
was
have
in
loved
Luxor
this.
for 5 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
That's
It's
amazing. Yeah. Well, this is this temple was the oldest parts of the temple were built under the reign of the last Egyptian pharaoh before Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. So it was begun in very Egyptian, you know, traditional Egyptian times. But, you know, as with anything, it gets added on. So there are parts of this temple that are very Greek, and there are parts of it that look Roman, and parts of it that look just very Egyptian. And this temple was really important. This is one of the World Heritage temples that was chopped into pieces and relocated because the area where it was going to be completely flooded by the creation of the Aswan High Dam.
How are they going to move that? That's amazing.
They moved it in like 40,000 chunks.
Unbelievable.
Yep. It really was. There were 50. We talked about this, you know, the last time, but there were like more than 50 nations that came together through UNESCO and worked on it for, I don't know, a decade or so, moving these temples. It was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. So you see on the left the docking area for the boats by the temple, and what's interesting here is the geological formation, the ancient rocks. I don't know about these particular rocks, but most of the rock formations in the area are said to be from the volcanic eruption that separated Africa from Europe. You know, your old ancient Earth history or you know, ancient geology, it all used to be one giant continent, and then you know, plate tectonics started happening and volcanic eruptions happened, and this Those rocks supposedly date to the time when Africa separated from Europe. On the right is one of the Roman parts. This is a little, like, we'd call it a chapel, I guess, that was built to celebrate Trajan, the Roman Emperor Trajan. You can see it's very different, in style. It really does give you a sense for Roman architecture and everything there. Philae Temple is it's like the primary temple in Egypt that celebrated and worshiped the goddess Isis. Most of the surviving parts of it are Ptolemaic. So that's after Alexander the Great conquered Egypt and before the Romans conquered Egypt. So in this picture on the left, you can see Isis. She is usually pictured with wings like that, but she is surrounding and protecting her son Horus. And this temple celebrates all things Isis. You can see that on the right is the birth temple. That's the temple that tells the narrative of Isis giving birth to Horus and nurturing him as the mother figure and everything. And the analogy is giving birth to the earth. That's the symbology and representation. The other important thing about this temple is that it is the place where the most recent to current times, hieroglyphs, genuine Egyptian hieroglyphs that are the newest in time, have been found here. This is the place where that occurred. And that was in, about just before 400 in the current era, right at the very end of the Roman occupation time. They were still using Egyptian hieroglyphs, which I thought, for me, that was kind of a weird, a revelation, because I associated hieroglyphs with King Tut, not with, Romans. So, in addition to the hieroglyphs, there we go. In addition to the hieroglyphs, that's not the only thing on the walls. Sadly, in a lot of these temples, they weren't as careful about keeping track of what people were doing there. And there's quite a bit of graffiti on the walls. Some of it ancient, some of it modern, a couple hundred years old, but not thousands of years old. On the top, you see that is actual ancient Roman graffiti. On the bottom is from the early 1800s. Hopefully you can make out the person's name. There was Craddock, and there's a year, can't tell if it's 1828 or 1823, but the early part of the 19th century. There was one other temple that we stopped at, and I'll just show you this exterior, people. This is an unusual temple because every other one that we've seen has had one central, aisle, central access through the temple. This one has two. And the reason is that it's dedicated to two separate gods. One is the god Horus, the other is the god Sobek. And of course, if you're a god, you can't share your corridor with another god. You have to have your own. So this temple has two main corridors running through the main axis. And our tour guide kept calling this was built, during Ptolemaic time. And our tour guide kept referring to this as ABGT temple. Finally, somebody said, what is an ABGT temple? What is that? And he said, that stands for another bloody Greek temple.
That's cute.
So the Egyptians have a sense of humor about their own history. The one other thing I'll show you is that one of the gods for this Kamombo temple is Sobek, the crocodile god. And this is there is a museum at Kamombo dedicated to mummified crocodiles. So, you know, the Egyptians mummified everything. They mummified people, they mummified cats, birds, bulls, crocodiles, anything and everything they could get to, they mummified, any living creature. So, you know, I walked into this place and they've got this display of sand there and these mummified crocodiles, and they looked so realistic. I looked at them twice before I thought, you know, okay, I really don't have to worry about, you know, they're not going to come after me.
They do look pretty real though.
They do. Yep. And I'll
See
leave
the
you with,
one
go ahead,
has
Jana.
arms down the side. Looks like it has arms down the side. It's
Yeah.
holding the head.
Yeah, does. I'll leave you with one final picture, which was my favorite
Uh-oh.
picture from
Wow.
all of Egypt. This is the temple, Luxor Temple at night,
Yes.
which is just absolutely stunning. It just has a grace and a presence to it that is, you know, when it's illuminated, that is just indescribable. So that's it. Travelogue series is in the books.
I have a similar picture, Barb, but it's purple. We went back to see the light show at night, and I just
Yeah.
kept taking pictures of all the different colors. And
Oh,
it
yeah.
really identifies the hieroglyphics. They just come out really. I have some great pictures of that. I just don't have enough walls.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow.
'Cause I-
Well, I'd love to compare
Beautiful.
pictures sometime.
Yes, that'd be great. Beautiful.
All right. Any other
Thank you.
questions
That's
or
great.
anything?
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you, Barb. Everybody, thank you very much for doing
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no
amazing.
problem. Yeah. All right. If you think of anything that, you know, you get off here and say, oh, I wish I'd asked, you know, shoot me an email. Jane Ann, I don't know if you have the same affliction I have, but I'll talk about Egypt forever. It just, it got
Well,
in my soul somehow.
Yeah,
be there.
and you know, I was telling you in a text or whatever that I not a day goes by when I don't look at some aspect of my photos. But the guy that I sat on the airplane with going to Luxor, he was a historian. He was reading a particular book, and he said he has been going to Luxor every year for 25 years, and
Wow.
he sees something different every time. He was from Europe.
Yeah.
And he was not an archaeologist. He wasn't doing the actual digs, but he just is fascinated. And he was going, actually, he was going to see one of the temples that we were going to see that was open for a very short time. Can't remember what, I have it written down somewhere, but can you imagine going back for 25 years every year, and he's
Yes.
never gets bored of it. He's
Wow.
always learning
Yeah.
more and more.
Because 30% of the monuments in the world are in Luxor.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's plenty to do to, you know, to go back year after year and look.
And you know, the one big temple in Cairo that the mosque that we went to, Paris, Egypt or Luxor gave Paris an obelisk, one of those beautiful obelisks that are at Kartak. And
Yeah.
what they got in return was this Paris clock, and it's been under construction for years. It's never worked. So can you
Yeah.
imagine what it took to get an obelisk, one of those massive, tall,
Yeah.
pointy things into Paris, and they get a clock that's in the mosque that doesn't work. I have a picture of it all under construction.
Wow. Yeah, there are Egyptian obelisks all over. The obelisk in St. Peter's Square in the Vatican is
Yep.
Egyptian.
There were 7 in total, and one's in St. Peter's, one's in Paris. Like I have a note to myself where they all
Yeah.
are, but just
Yeah.
just getting them there in one piece and erecting them. So when I think of taking all those temples down and putting them somewhere else, because that just boggles my mind.
Oh, incredible, incredible.
Thank you very much. That was great.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll be dreaming again.
Yeah.
You know, we stayed in a gorgeous condo on the 2nd floor with a massive balcony. And I thought I kept thinking, It looked like it had IKEA furniture. Well, it turns out that the woman had come there on vacation. She was from Sweden. She'd
So it
fallen in
was.
love. She'd married this Muslim guy, and they had bought this condominium. But we had a massive balcony with IKEA wicker furniture on the balcony overlooking the Nile. It was $26 Canadian a night. I was
Oh
there
my
for
gosh.
5 nights.
Wow.
Wow.
It was fantastic. And the whole thing was marble on the inside. Marble floors, marble bathrooms, marble everything. It was
Incredible.
amazing. I still have her name and stuff because I swear I'm going to go back. I
Yeah,
keep saying I'm going to
That's
go back.
amazing. Yeah.
yeah,
So lots to learn.
yeah, for sure.
It gave the whole concept of pyramids a different connotation. When people go, yeah, that's not a pyramid. Oh yeah, well that is.
Yeah, right. Right.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much for all
Thanks
your
very
info.
much, Barb.
Yeah, no worries. This is fun. I enjoyed it.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
And
So stay tuned. I'll put a plug next month. Ken's going to take us to Cambodia.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
We're
It's
gonna
one place I've never
see-
want to go, but I love seeing it through the eyes of other people.
We're going to see Angkor Wat, and we're going to see the Killing Fields.
Oh, wow.
Yes, we'll spend a little bit of time in that darkest period of Cambodia's history, the Killing Fields, the Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge, which is really quite an amazing experience. But then we'll spend the time in the gorgeous presidential palace, and then at the thousands of years old ruins of Angkor Wat. And I was traveling with my friend Dr. Mel White, and he had a surprise for me when we got back to Phnom Penh, and I'll share that surprise with you. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Excellent.
Wow.
Cool.
Looking
Look
forward to that. And
And
next
next
week
week-
is
Sure,
book club, and we're reading Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, and it's mostly an autobiography, but it's also, he's got a lot of philosophical
Insight.
stuff in there, and insights, and poetry. So it's quite a mix of all kinds of stuff in there. So
Yeah.
we'll be doing
I've taken it out of the library twice and had to take it back because people were waiting. So I
Oh.
still haven't.
You got another week.
I
One
put it
more
on
week.
loan again. So
All
anyway,
right. Well, I'm going to
Thank you
stop the
very much.
recording now.